What is happening, AJ Game Dude here? And Activision has supposedly cancelled Crash Bandicoot 5. So I did make a video before about Crash 5 being cancelled, and apparently there were videos going around saying how there were rumors surrounding that it was never actually in development, but rather it was just conceptually being thought up of and things along those lines. We kind of have a better idea now of what that Crash 5 kind of looked like, and even though it may have been in a conceptual stage, the fact that any work at all had been done or any idea was thought up at all seems a little bit disappointing, especially with what the plan may have been. Though in saying that, this might be a little bit more of a broad speculative way of looking at it, but I just wanted to kind of talk about what Crash 5 could have been. So a new report claims that Activision greenlit and cancelled a single-player Crash Bandicoot 5 while it continued to chase live service games. Specifically coming from YouTuber and gaming historian Liam Robertson, aka Did You Know Gaming, just released a video investigating what happened behind the scenes at the developer Toys for Bob, and highly recommend actually looking this up, because there's some insane stuff in here that I would have absolutely loved. Because as a fan of someone who loves Crash games, especially from back in the day, Crash 4 was good, but not my favorite Crash game. And then I absolutely adore Spyro. Spyro is my favorite platforming franchise of all time, second only to Sonic the Hedgehog, and then Crash is somewhere in there as well. So without a doubt, I would have been head over heels for what the actual plan was for Crash 5. That being said, Activision had actually considered Crash Bandicoot 4's sales to be underwhelming, which it sold over 5 million copies. And for a franchise that's been around since like the late 90s and hasn't had a good game since Crash 3, to receive Crash 4 since the Insane Trilogy, and also for the Insane Trilogy to also get an additional couple of levels in the first original level in the form of future tense for Crash 3, I really am just kind of in awe at like the creativity that these developers could have in making some very solid titles with their skill and complexity to the gameplay that they've kind of offered. So yeah, apparently it was going to be a direct sequel to Crash 4, It's About Time, with concept art and story concepts that revealed the sequel was planned to reintroduce classic villains, possibly feature levels set within characters' psyches, and bring back elements from 2004's Crash Twinsanity, and even crossover with Spyro the Dragon. And out of all of the post-Naughty Dog Crash games, their best game was actually Crash Twinsanity. Think about that for a second. Some people are going to probably put their fist up and say Wrath of Cortex, but Wrath of Cortex has too many levels that have far varying degrees of quality, to the point where you've got some god-awful levels, like especially stuff from the Secret Warp Room, to some relatively good stuff that does actually equate to the earlier titles in the series made by Naughty Dog. But the thing is that those levels far exceed quality-wise to most of what we get from Wrath of Cortex, Twinsanity, Crash of the Titans, and also Mind Over Mutant, if you really want to go that far. And that's not even talking about Crash Nitro Kart, which is probably that's the second worst racer. The worst racing game would absolutely have to be Crash Tag Team Racing, without a shadow of a doubt. So I guess things could always be worse, but then again, I feel like we were just kind of splitting hairs at that point. But yeah. So yeah, unfortunately Crash 5 was canned around the same time as Activision alleged cancellation of the single-player Tony Hawk Pro Skater game, while Toys for Bob was then put to work on short-lived multiplayer spin-off Crash Team Rumble, which I totally forgot. Crash Team Rumble does actually exist, and yes, it is no longer in development, and hell, the fact that Toys for Bob is no longer part of Activision means that they're able to go and do their own thing, which again, theory crafting wise, some people assume that because they're partnering with Xbox and Microsoft, they could very well be a Banjo-Kazooie game, or potentially them working on Spyro, because most of their advertising is currently purple. But that could be just going in any which way, and I'm not too really sure how you want to go about figuring that. But it's just sad to consider that, hey, Crash 5 was going to be a sequel to Crash 4. It was going to take elements from Twinsanity, it was going to cross over with Spyro, and it was going to reintroduce old villains from the series. Obviously, like, could it have had Crash villains and Spyro villains kind of coming together in a way that was way better than whatever Crash Fusion and Spyro Fusion was? Because granted, those two games were absolutely god bloody awful. But the fact of the matter is that we could have potentially gotten a quality game that had that sort of crossover material in it. Unfortunately, it was never meant to be, and thus we find ourselves here talking about what could have been, for better or for worse. Even if it's a bad game, I would have loved to have had something more to be able to play, but I guess I'm just kind of, grasping at straws and hoping for a better future. But in saying that, let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel. I'm aiming for 300 subs by the end of the year. I do have a Patreon, so if you do want to toss a few bucks my way and say, hey, you're doing a good job, feel free to do that with the Patreon link in the description below. And with all that said and done, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.